Recipe is hot water ganache, which breaks all the rules of chocolate making in general. So first start with some really high quality high cocoa chocolate. This is around about 75 or 80% organic plain chocolate, and you can grate it if you want to. I prefer to cut. I wouldn't just separate it into the squares. You need these to be fairly small to start with. So just go on through with a knife. As I said, you can grate it, but I find that when I'm grating, it kind of gets a static charge and goes everywhere, becomes a complete and utter mess. So for this recipe you need 225 grams, which is about 10 ounces of at least 70% cocoa chocolate. So once that's in a bowl, you put 170 ml of water onto the hob with 50 grams or 2 ounces of muscovado sugar, or some very dark kind of molassesy sugar, so muscovado sugar or dark brown sugar, something like that, and you just whisk it. Nothing extra, nothing particularly special, just keep whisking, and I suggest that you put it in a relatively small bowl so that all the heat stays in that bowl and doesn't go out into the glass necessarily. So you just keep it moving and it will melt, and it won't separate or seize or anything. It will just become a really quite thin ganache at this point, and that you can use for pouring over cakes once it's cooled down a bit as well. So you just whisk it until it becomes absolutely smooth. No more lumps, which is why again you cut the chocolate quite small. Okay, it's boring, I'm just whisking, but it's got to be done. Make sure all the lumps are melted, because if you've got one bit that's not, then that will affect the whole batch. And you can leave them in the bowl if you want to. I prefer to transfer into a earthenware dish, so it's going to cool down faster. So once you scrape this out, you cool it down and put it in the fridge for at least an hour. This has only been in for maybe 45 minutes, so it's still fairly soft in the middle. The edges are mostly set, it's soft in the middle. So you just scoop it out with, I'm using a melon baller, roll it between your fingers, not the palms of your hands because they're warmer. And that's a plate of cocoa powder. So I'm just rolling them and dropping them on there. You can, if you want to, roll them, stick them back in the fridge and then dip them in chocolate, but I prefer them like this. So I'm just dusting off excess cocoa and kind of reshaping as well, because as I said, these are a bit warm still, so they're a little bit flexible. I'm dropping these onto a plate with cocoa nibs on it, so they get stuck into the bottom of the chocolates, and then they're going to go into little petit four cases like that. So once you've done that, they go back in the fridge for at least an hour or so. I think some of these weren't sticking very well, so I ended up putting the nibs into the bottom of the cases. But same idea really. So I'm now using some luster dust, just to give these a little bit of a fancy edge, because these are going for a special order. So, and I've got there a wax stamp. It's never been used for wax, so it's absolutely clean. It's been washed a couple of times. So just dip it in the luster dust and then use that to stamp onto the top of the chocolate. Et voila, just like that. So that is water ganache, and this recipe will get you 35 to 40 individual chocolates. So cappuccino mousse, which is really quite a popular one when I make it. And the original recipe calls for 200 grams of milk chocolate, but I use 150 of milk and then 50 of dark chocolate, and that seems to stabilise it for the next couple of processes. And then 50 grams of butter and 8 tablespoons of double cream, which is 120 ml double cream, and a pinch of salt, and whack it in the microwave for 30 seconds or so on high until it all melts. You don't need to get it all the way down, just more or less, and then you kind of mix it through until it finishes. So it starts off looking a bit weird, and then you just mix it through like this until it's gorgeous and smooth. This one is quite an easy one to do, and you don't have to make a cappuccino. This one's got a couple of teaspoons of instant coffee, and I'm now going to put in a slug of liqueur. So I put that in after it's heated so that most of the alcohol stays in. Although, you know, in terms of this batch will make somewhere between 30 and 40 chocolates, so, you know, a couple of tablespoons of liqueur is not going to be very much. And now you leave this on the side until it's room temperature, so don't chill it yet. And you need a handheld whisk, or at least one you can remove the blades from. And you give it a couple of minutes of whizzing until it becomes frothy. Now you can't really skimp on this stage and the stages that follow. So you give it a whisk until it's frothy, put it in the fridge, or put it in the fridge for 5 minutes, and then take it out, give it another whiz until it's frothy again, and then back in the fridge. And you do that no more than 4 times, no less than 2 times. So depending on what kind of structure you want your chocolates to be, or if you want to use it as cake filling, that's kind of the process. So this is the last whiz. So that's had 3 lots of whiz and chill. So, and I always do it like this so I can remove the blades, so it saves on washing them up in between. And the extra bit of dark chocolate helps to stabilise this. If you just use milk chocolate, it does tend to separate when you get to this point. So remember, as you're chilling it, it's going to get solid around the edges, so make sure you're scraping around the edges with the beater, so you're getting as much of the mixture incorporated as possible. So that's it, really. That was the last one is always a little quicker. You go too far, it will separate, and it becomes really, really light and moussey. So for these ones, I'm using moulds. So I'm just brushing in a little bit of luster dust just to give them a bit of shine. I'm only doing the very bottoms kind of to one side, just to give it a bit of flair, really. Also use whatever mould you've got. These ones are more forgiving if you haven't tempered your chocolate properly. So this is just white chocolate. It's been tempered to the best of my ability. I'm still not very good at it, but I do my best. So I've got in this bowl 300 grams of, or did have in the bowl 300 grams of chocolate, and that's enough to fill 2 moulds, and then enough to do the bottoms afterwards, with kind of maybe 30 odd grams just left over at the end. So when you're working out your quantities, that's how I go, at least. So make sure that all your little holes are filled. Give it a good tap down so it drops in and all the bubbles are removed. And I always do these in pairs so that I can just tip over like this and fill the next one. And depending on how warm your chocolate is, it may be quite thin on the inside. It may need a little bit longer to drain out to get just a thin shell. We don't want a thick shell on these. So just tidy up the edge. And then place some top down so it levels out. And you'll see there are missing holes here. That's because the coverage wasn't great, so I removed those so I don't end up piping them and them leaking. So you fill them up and then add some more chocolate on the bottoms and scrape that back, and then chill it in the fridge for a couple of hours. And these moulds, it's great, you can just flex and everything pops out. So that's cappuccino done. And you can use other flavourings if you want to on these. And the last one, I stole this recipe from Ann Reardon on how to make that. So you want to go to see her original one. It's one of her chocolate making videos. So this is 200 grams of frozen thawed raspberries and 4 tablespoons of double cream. just whiz that up in the blender, then push it through a sieve. And whilst you're doing that, on the pan, or on the hob, you want to put a pan with 300 grams of caster sugar, 2 tablespoons of glucose syrup and 75 ml of water just onto heat. So I try and do these things all at the same time so it's all pretty much working together. So you don't have to strain this, but you don't want that many seeds really. So here's my pan of sugar and glucose and water, and you just stir it a bit and then leave it to melt together. And it's going to take some time to get where you need it to be. So once it's all melted together, watch it closely because it's going to start to turn golden. Probably not the best idea to use a silver grey pan for this because it makes it difficult to see when it's turning golden. So with this, because it's got glucose syrup in it, it's fairly stable, so you can stir it without it crystallising. But other caramels you really can't. So just every now and again have a stir and scrape down the sides, and you can see this is getting a little bit golden, not quite there yet. So you can tell when you're getting close because the bubbles get bigger. Should have been wearing an apron or something, but I almost never do when I'm cooking. I'm not normally very successful with hot sugar recipes, but this one surprised me. This one really worked quite well. So that's golden enough for me, so I'm just taking it off the heat and then adding in the raspberry mixture and 50 grams of, no it's not, 25 grams of cubed butter. And this is going to spit and hiss and probably be quite dangerous, so I think using the wide pan was a bad idea. But I am wearing a matching t-shirt, so any spills will be covered up. So I end up with quite a bit of that raspberry left in the blender, or in the jar, so I probably could have done that better. Anyway, just give this a stir through off the heat, just to get everything somewhat combined. And then return to the heat and continue to stir whilst that butter melts. Sorry about the camera. A little bit close on my shoulder there. Alright, so when this is pretty much combined and all the butter's melted, it won't take very long. Bring it back up to a boil and put in a candy thermometer, and you need to heat this up to 230 F or 110 Celsius. Now that makes it kind of more syrupy than caramelly. I found in my next batch I made, I took it up to 114, and that was a lot thicker, although it made it more difficult to pipe then, but one or the other really. So just as it's bubbling, just stir it every now and again. You don't need to keep stirring really. You can try and skim off the foam if you really want to, but I find it's not a problem. And then once you reach your temperature, pour it into a bowl to cool and you're done. So that is 3 more recipes for chocolate centres from the Dragon Shed. So I'll see you next week.